Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm just looking to see how we're doing with attendees. I think everybody's pretty much in. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. We are covering today three elements of what is known in the industry around Industry 4.0 or digital business transformation or digital transformation. Whereby we're just exploring that connection between the increase and prevalence of technology in the workplace. Today we've got three guests. David Jones, who's a digital transformation consultant and specialist, who'll be discussing how to harness the technology to support the process of changing your business. I've got Alexei Yanoulotis, who is from Zap, and he will be exploring how to use technology to take control of the data and to be able to elevate that status of data to enhance the business decision process and decision making. And finally, Kevin Phillips from IDU, who'll be demonstrating or talking through how to free the time of the finance team by utilizing a budget and forecast control tool. Overall, these are thought provokers, and we're hoping to allow you to see how adopting technology can improve the business. I'll hand over now to David.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well. Thank you, Nick. My name is David Jones. I've been in the IT industry for over 20 years, specializing in ERP and transformational projects. Sorry, the slides are a bit slow clicking on. Okay, so let's cover some topics as to what we're going to be talking about today. We have 5 topics to cover. First is, what is Industry 4.0? Let's have a definition of that. Second one is, what is the innovation gap? You may have heard that being mentioned. The third is, let's look at the drivers and forces affecting your business. The fourth is, what tools are in Industry 4.0 to help you add value to your business? And the fifth is, what are the challenges coming down the tracks and how can Industry 4.0 help you? Okay, let's get a definition first of all. Back in 1760, the steam train was Industry 4.0. It was steam power and the mechanism thereof. 1879 saw Edison steal the idea of the electric light bulb. Controversial, I know. 1960 was probably the dawn of the ERP age. So when we're talking about business systems, back in 1960, this is what your computer system looked like. Most of them were IBM. Most of them had lots and lots of tape drives, whirling things. In the 20th century, 2011 actually, 21st century, sorry, in a Hanover fair, the term Industry 4.0 was christened. And it's all about connectivity. So an ERP system typically is inward looking. Industry 4.0 and the solutions thereof is outwardly looking. Okay, what is the industry gap or the innovation gap? The blue line talks about the speed that a business can actually change at. People, processes, infrastructure, they all slow things down and stop innovation. The yellow line or orange line is reality. That is what is happening on a day-to-day basis. And that's your gap. And Microsoft have said that 83% of businesses are going to have to spend some money to actually bridge that gap, to make an investment. If you look at a prime example of this, these are all the different technologies we probably all use every day of our lives. And, you know, you can see the adoption rate. Obviously, airlines have slowed down a bit, given since March the 27th. But everything else we probably use on a day-to-day basis. I don't personally use Pokemon Go, though my son does, and he's addicted to Twitter as well. But, you know, you can see that the adoption years is down to days, minutes probably at some point. Innovation 4.0 would be wrong to talk about that without talking about how it affects factories and manufacturing. we look at the 5 M's. The first one is materials, and what innovation is giving us is quality assurance, the way we can track products from source right up to where they're being used. We can check the management of the company to see what they're doing in terms of processes, and how they're checking out information, how they're managing their suppliers and their customers. We can look at method, so we can check out to make sure that there's a quality control process in place, things like RF, give you the ability to track products through a factory process or through warehouses. We have machines, so we can now track to make sure that machines are actually working okay. Sensors can check if the temperature is right, if they're not vibrating too much, if they're using too much electricity. So it's all about quality, reducing downtime, and doing preventive maintenance when it's needed rather than just because it's on the schedule. Digital twin, you may have heard of this. It's a typical way of creating a virtual machine that you can then run experiments on. You can see what would happen if something gets too hot, too cold, what the lifespan is. And digital twinning is becoming much, much more common in industry these days. And the last one is manpower, checking to make sure the right person is doing the right job, has the right qualifications or the right training underneath their belt. So all of this data we can capture, and we can then use that to feed a data lake. Data warehouse, data lake, data storage. There's many, many names for it, but all this data can be put into what is a very, very large database. We can then run machine learning against that, or AI, to give us predictive analysis. So for instance, we could have the factory running and a red light comes up and says, this batch of pies you're making is going to fail because of this reason. The machine isn't working right, the person who's done the work isn't qualified, the supplier's products weren't right the last time, so we're expecting it to be wrong this time. So all of that kind of stuff can help your business add value to your process to make sure that you add value to the business itself. So a couple of terms you're going to hear a lot of. Digital thread is becoming very, very common. It's all about tracking something from its source to when it's used. So say if you're making chicken pies, you can track the fact that this chicken came from this factory, all the way through to which factory made it, what they did in the process, how it was shipped to the Tesco's, and how Tesco sold it. So all about bringing data and making it alive. You also have intelligence and analytics, all about getting very, very accurate and very quick data out of your system. Every one of these 5 M's has a financial impact on it, and being able to report against those is very, very important. So Sage X3, for instance, could be your ERP that tracks all of these items and manages your data thread in terms of product coming in, going through the process, and being finished as finished goods. You could have Zap, putting your data lake in place to handle all the data management. Running an application like Power BI can give you data intelligence, and IDU can give you the financial planning you needed to make sure your business is doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, what are the forces in play in your business? Well, there's 2 main areas. There's internal forces, shareholders and the like, and external forces. And we're going to focus on the external forces because they're the ones I think we can probably see a lot readier. First thing would be, if you look at things like external forces, Nokia was basically killed off by Apple, purely because Apple had better technology and also had a better marketing strategy. So sometimes it's not a technology advantage that kills you, it's the fact that marketing and people are perceived as wanting to go for this product. Blockbuster, typical example, if anybody does an MBA, Blockbuster was killed off by Netflix. 2 reasons. One was it was a physical device you had to bring back to the store. And if you didn't do that, there was a very, very high cost to you. In fact, Blockbuster made more money on that than it did on actual rental. Simple, humble doorbell now has been replaced by one of them lads, okay, which I believe now go on fire, but that's a different story. So, you know, you can see technology at home is moving. In my parents' house, that was what the thermometer looked like, or thermostat looked like for the central heating. Most people have something similar to this, and we all think we're very clever, but actually it's moving here. And this is all about what we call digital platforms, a technology replacing something that we know and love, purely because the technology is sitting on a data center and you can then link everything up. If you think of your brand, Kodak, last I've seen of them, they make bulbs now. Tesla and its sister company have put 4 people into the ISS this weekend. So, you know, that's where the industry is going. Even the example above where we have a retail store, and I don't know if everybody remembers those or not, but that's been replaced by click and collect or click and it gets delivered off. Amazon is whipping most businesses' tail in basis that it's actually taking that element. Okay, what are the key elements of Industry 4.0? The first has got to be adaptive intelligence, machine learning. You know, you see this every day. If you go on Facebook or LinkedIn, it'll pop up something that it thinks is relevant to you. And that's all about an algorithm looking at what you've done and showing you what's happening. Try something. Go on Google and type in lawnmower, and then see how many times after you do that, that lawnmower sales, lawnmower servicing, brand new lawnmowers, robot lawnmowers pop up on your data. It'll be everywhere, and that's because AI is picking up your data and your needs. RPA is becoming much more prevalent in the IT industry, especially in finance, to take forms, take documents, and input them into computers. And that's an automatic process. You can build flowcharts, you can build logic around those. Robots, we all see them rocking around. And you know, I don't think they're replacing everybody, but they're certainly replacing the manual tasks that either need very high quality or 24/7 production. Internet of Things is basically a smart word for saying that we've got a sensor on something and it's connected to a data center somewhere. Digital twin is where you take an object and you build a virtual version of that. And it's all about trying to spot when something's going to fail. So if something fails and you have a sensor on it, you can then build that data and say, okay, what do we need to look for the next time so that when that happens, it can happen. It's becoming much more prevalent, not only on devices, but also on processes. Chatbots, we've all seen chatbots. You go online to order something, a little box pops up, hey, how can I help you? That's usually something to do with a virtual machine. Now it's moving from text to voice, and that's where a lot of ERPs are sort of coming in for data entry. A lot of HCM systems, for instance, are putting in chat boxes for things like how many days I got left, all those sort of simple questions that a computer can answer. All this data gives us real-time analytics, and that's a big thing. Being able to see data. When I started off in the IT industry, we ran off a sales report once a month for our sales managers, and they went through as like a 700-page report to find the bits that they were interested in. Now we've got dashboards, we've got everything is right up to date. We can see exactly what's going on. And that's all based on real-time data analytics. All of this stuff is possible because of the cloud. The cloud is basically somebody else's server sitting in a data center, but it basically means that businesses don't have to invest and they can go on things like software as a service. They don't have to spend a huge amount of money on ERP purchases. They can buy them as a service. And that changes the model completely from and leaves and frees up working capital for running the business. Augmented reality and enhanced reality. We've seen this in the service industry where you go into a pump and it'll show you what needs to be broken or is broken and can be fixed. But also it's now into sort of physical psychotherapy and medicine. And that's becoming a much more open area for doctors to work with patients. Integrating CRMs into your ERP system and your ordering system gives you, again, future information about your next version of who you're going to sell to, your sales pipeline, what's happening, helps you forecast, helps you predict what's going on. Now, blockchain, we'll talk about that in a second, but basically, if you think of it as a way of tracking information, this case, things like farm to table, farm to consumer, all the way through. Blockchain itself, you've probably heard a lot of words about this. It's not just to do with the Bitcoin. It's all about creating a secure, auditable data source that you can run and track information on. The two main areas would be track and trace, tracking items all the way through a supply chain, and provenance, checking out where a product came from. But there are other things. Digital contracts are all about where if something has happened, this was going to happen. So it's a when this, do this type of logic that goes in. Totally auditable. It can be used for warranties, it can be used for secure maintenance. The drivers would be regulation. A lot of companies are saying we need to have information so that if a customer asks us where did this sausage come from, we know where it came from. Also, a lot of millennials are now saying, well, where did this product come from? What's the carbon footprint? And our blockchain can give us all that information. couple of very useful use cases. Volvo were using it to track their cobalt to make sure that the provenance of the cobalt being used in the batteries is correct. Boeing are using it for record maintenance on aircraft, but also software on aircraft. So when an aircraft boots up now, it actually checks to make sure every version of the software it's running is the right version, it's the correct version. And it does that using blockchain to make sure that it's not being hacked by anything. Your own customs and excise in the UK are using it to track tobacco. So if you are selling tobacco in the UK now, you have to track at each stage when you got it, when you ordered it, when it was delivered, where it's gone to, what retail store it's gone to. That's all now being tracked through blockchain for the customs. And US banks are using it for money laundering. Tracking money laundering, not actually using it for block. That'd be bad. Okay, a couple of things coming up. COVID-19 obviously is a big thing at the moment. I want to add one thing to that, which is that I think future vaccines will probably use blockchain to check that you're getting the right products. Brexit coming up. Again, I think we're moving from physical checking to virtual checking. So I think your loads and your products are going to be tracked now on a virtual environment. Just to finish on a happy tone, if we've got a world recession, I think critical reporting and fast decision making is going to be very, very important to get over issues that we have. That's all I've got. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to hand you over to Alexei now from Zap.
Thanks, David. Let's just move to. Just want to confirm. Can you hear me? Okay, yes. There we go. Thanks. Sorry, I just had a little bit of a connection issue there with my internet. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Alexei Yanulatos. I'm the Regional Director of Operations at a company called Zap. We do a product called SDA, which is Sage Data Analytics. And what I want to talk to you today about is achieving better control of your data. So just looking at an overview of what I'm going to be covering in the session is one of the things is with our product, it's a single data warehouse. So we offer you a single data warehouse that you can actually report on all the different modules within the business and cater for the different personas within the company. We also offer you data governance, so data governance and security and control. Another part of it is just the smart connectors. So when I move on to the next slides, you'll see that with the smart connectors, we give you these smart connectors so that you can basically connect your ERP system and follow the steps, bring it in, and you're ready to start reporting on that. One of the other things is, how do we handle multiple sites, multiple regions? How do we, and this is one of the things I'm going to show you when we look at different types of slices when we link to these data sources. And the final part of it is, it's a universal solution for disparate systems. So if you have multiple different systems that you want to report in a single warehouse, we give you that ability to do that. So the very first part, as you can see, these are all the different types of solutions that we can connect in, what we call our smart solutions. But the one thing that we want to look at today is Sage X3. So as you can see right now, what's actually being brought up here now is it's showing me this is my Sage 3 connector. I'm going to give you the model. I'm going to give you the analytics straight out of the box. And you'll see on the top there, those are the 5 steps that we actually use to actually bring in the data. So once we look at that, we connect up our Sage X3. So we put in all our connection details and we go through that 5-step wizard. We'll then be presented with a model. So this is the out-of-the-box model that we give you. So the data sources are connected. We take all the tables out of X3 and we create what we call pipelines. Now those pipelines is basically what we call them pipelines because we transform the data. So I'm going to show you what a pipeline looks like. So as you can see, it takes all these table names. So I'm just going to hover my mouse over here. All these table names that are in X3, and it doesn't have to be X3 as well. It can be multiple data sources, and we unify the data and we turn it into a plain English state. This gives us the ability to understand exactly where does the data come from. We encourage you, obviously, as customers, to be the custodian of the product and be able to be self-sufficient as well. So the next part of it is we take those pipelines and we create relationships. Now, what those relationships do is it gives us the ability to take that data and slice and dice the data the way we want it. So if we want to look at, for example, your sales amount by branch or by customer or by any of those, we create those relationships, and that's essentially what it does. Is it gives you that ability now to slice and dice the data. So if I click on my next slide, for example, you'll see this is now an example of how the relationships actually work. So we're taking these pipelines and we're creating relationships with other pipelines to be able to give you that ability to report on. This is, as you can see, this is all out of the box. This is nothing that you need to do. Once you've created that five-step wizard and you've brought in your data, this has already been created for you. Then we take that whole solution and we apply some security to it. What we call is, and especially with the X3, is we've got this thing called dynamic security. So we look at the actual security that's been applied in X3, and then we take that logic and we apply it to ours. So for example, if Bob has not got access to a specific set of accounts or a specific set of a specific company or branch, we'll actually take that logic and we'll apply that same security into our system. That's one key thing is really when it comes to systems like this is you might have all the security within your source data, and then the minute you put it into a visualization or into a warehouse, you could actually lose all that security, and we don't want that. Essentially what we do is that's where we come with the data governance and we apply that. So moving on to that, then we look at report calculations, what we give you out of the box. So out of the box, we give you 234 different calculations. So looking at that, so if I click on the next slide, this will give you sort of an example of the different the calculations that you can actually use in your reports. And these are also included in all the different dashboards that I'm going to show you in the next couple of slides. So if you want to understand, for example, what net sales is, you don't need to go and apply that logic. You already have a calculation here that says, give me my sales, less my expenses, and that's essentially my net sales. So I spoke about the different personas. So out of the box, we now give you dashboards basically for finance, inventory, manufacturing, procurement, and sales. And once you've gone through that whole step wizard, everything's created. These are the different types of dashboard that we'll give you, and they're going to just come through as you can see. I've just set up a slide here to just go through all the different modules. For example, so finance, it will give you sort of balance sheets and income statements. We give you dashboards with stock, procurement, sales, inventory, all those things. Now we spoke about being able to slice and dice the data, but looking at by branch and region, things like that. And you'll see that on the top here, we've got these different slices. So the next slide, what I've actually done is I've actually created a little video here. I'm going to just play it of how the slices actually work. So you can see I'm in the sales manager dashboard right now, and I'm going to select different companies, so I can slice it by companies. This is a standard dashboard I'm looking at, and you can see that as I'm selecting them, you'll see all the numbers start changing. So if I select everything, that's giving me in a consolidated view. But now I actually want to just look at it by these particular companies. Maybe I want to look at it as a particular month. So as you can see, I'm selecting different months here, and you'll see how everything starts changing. I can see now what my top 5 countries, customers, sales, and product classes by the selection types that I'm actually using on the top here. So it makes it very interactive and easy to use. So without further ado, I want to thank you so much for that. I'm just going to move to the next slide. I'll try and get to that. Sorry, there's a. Thank you very much. I would like to just hand over to Kevin. Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning, everybody across that side of the world. I was going to show you some slides and views of what our system looks like, but I decided to change my tact a bit and rather talk more generically about the budgeting process and how you can make it more effective. So the general overview, pretty much I want to look at how you empower your process, what forecasting is, and financial data modeling. Now, in doing that, I can get my slides to move. There you go. So how do you measure a successful budget? Do you measure by how close are you to actuals? How long did it take to compile? Are the numbers in line with last year? Are the numbers going the right way? Are those measures, are those ways that you look at your success of your budget process? Or is it, did the board approve it? And how long did it take them to approve it? Now, obviously, as a bean counter myself, as an accountant, those are all important measures for how successful our budget is. However, fundamentally, I've changed my view in terms of how we measure that. because I think your budgeting really, if you want your budget to work, the only real measure is how close are your actuals next year to the budget you set this year. And if an accountant sits in an ivory tower and does a budget for the company and then pushes that down to everybody, there is very limited buy-in to that process. If there's very limited buy-in, there's unlikely to be accuracy in terms of spending in compliance or in line with that budget. So what we tend to do, or the way I prefer to look at it, is to actually define empowerment and look at empowerment. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, empowerment is really all about looking at your departmental managers and giving them, empowering them with the ability to take or be involved in the budget process. If you get them involved in the budget process, they take ownership of that process. Now, the interesting thing is how much departmental managers actually enjoy that sense of ownership, that sense of empowerment. And if they're buying in, if they feel involved, if they feel that you're looking at what they're doing and looking at their and valuing their contribution to a budget, then all of a sudden the next step becomes almost implicit, and that's accountability. And that's really where the accountant starts to look at it and starts to get excited because, like I said, if your budget doesn't reflect what is actually spent 12 months later, then your budget has largely failed because it's not really good or indicative of what where you actually are going to be. But once your cost center managers, your departmental managers start taking accountability because they were empowered and took ownership of their budget, the actuals start to align far, far closer with the budgets. And the reason for that is that you have every right to ask, why is your actual and your budget different? The reason you can ask that question is because they've been involved throughout the process, they've been empowered, they've taken ownership, and therefore it's not unreasonable for them to be accountable. Cloaked around all of that is transparency. Transparency lets people see what they need to see to do their jobs. It doesn't mean everybody gets to see everything. It means people get to see what they need to see to do their jobs. So how do you take control of your budgeting process in that context? Doing everything manually in this day and age doesn't really work. You need to have tools to assist you. Now, I've already mentioned that I'm an accountant by trade, a bean counter if you like. I love Excel. I'm sure most of you in the audience love Excel as well. It was built for accountants. We love it, okay? It makes our life so much easier. However, if you start getting into larger organizations, consolidating 1, 2, or 3 spreadsheets into one single view is relatively easy. Consolidating 15, 16, 17 with 9, 10, 11, 12 tabs gets a bit more complex. Once you get above that, it becomes nigh on impossible to do. Tracking down areas, tracking down problems and formulas, those are all issues that become significantly challenging if you're using Excel. So whilst I love Excel, I can see that its greatest strength, which is its flexibility, is also its biggest weakness. Because in a larger corporate where you need standardization, you need to be able to merge things seamlessly together, take away a little bit of the individuality which are given to users, and you need to consolidate that into a more corporate standardized format. Excel's not the right tool for that. So like I said, its biggest strength in many ways also becomes its biggest weakness. So you really are looking at a web-based platform. And that comes to something David said. I mean, we are moving forward into that world where web-based is so pertinent. I think if nothing, the pandemic, the lockdowns have proven that we need to be able to work remotely. And now that we've been forced to do it, I think businesses are realizing just how easy it is to actually do. And I think that is one of the changes that are not going to reverse. Once a vaccine's out there, people aren't all of a sudden going to rush back to the office. We are going to have a degree of remote working, which is going to persist long into the future. In many ways, I think it was always coming. I think the pandemic has just accelerated that process. You need to be able to look at your core data and you need to have multiple views of that. So you can look at your results by division, by region, by product type, etc. It needs to be online real time. You don't want to be waiting for the accountants to get all the data in, to add it all up, to let you see what your regional budget looks like. You need to be able to look at your regional budget as it's being created by your cost center managers, by your departmental managers in the business. You're not waiting, and you shouldn't be beholden to the accountants to consolidate that information. It must be done for you by the system. Your reduced budget cycles. Budgets should not take months. If you're working in an empowered environment, if you're working with real-time aggregation, online real-time aggregation and budgets, you have the beauty of being able to work in an environment where your budget should be taking you weeks. Forecasts should be taking you days, not months. Security and access control. Well, at the end of the day, a budget is a financial product. So if your budget is a financial product, then you need to be sitting in a situation where the finance department actually administer and manage all of that information. So therefore, they are the custodians of the information. They are the people that need to be managing who can do what, when, and how. That's not an IT function. Although many people, whenever you talk about security and access control, IT immediately puts up their hand, but this is not the same thing. This is a financial function. It's a financial environment of financial control. This is where we need to be working as a finance team. So what do you need? I've said you need to have an online system. You can't have a very simple system because everybody has different requirements. Industries have different requirements, although strangely enough, you can reduce that to a single common denominator. But whatever tool set you select, you need to have some basic functionality in the system. Standard accounts with spread factors, fixed accounts, CapEx budgeting, employee budgeting, all the way down to payroll, because that's a big expense, statistical reporting, activities, project budgeting, all of that stuff is vitally important and needs to be part and parcel of what you do. And if you just look at that variety of functionality, you begin to see, hang on, can I build all of this in Excel? Well, yes, you can. But once again, how do you manage that across a large platform of users? In terms of reporting, again, reporting and forecasting needs to be automated as far as possible. It needs to be out of the box, as Alexi was saying. You know, you need to be able to get this stuff to run really, really quickly. It needs to be done at departmental level because you need to get, once again, the empowerment of your cost center managers, departmental managers. You need them involved in the process. It needs to be online. It needs to be real time. It needs to make the process fast. You should be doing forecasts in hours or days, not weeks and months. And you need to be able to have run rates built into the system. So these are all things that you actually need to have in any sort of standard system. And the next thing I want to talk about is financial modeling, because obviously, particularly at the moment, whatever budget you did last year is irrelevant because of COVID-19. It's changed everything. Some companies have done phenomenally well. The vast majority have experienced significant underperformance, largely not through any fault of their own. So what is financial modeling? So financial modeling is all about having a base set of data, which could be your starting point, your detailed budget, and then assumptions. So what assumptions are relevant or pertinent to your business? What are your drivers of your business? And how many are there and what are they? And then how many different scenarios do you have? Once you've defined your assumptions and your scenarios and you've got your base set of data, it's really a question of linking your assumptions or your scenarios to your data in terms of creating accounts. So the accounts that you have in your trial balance are driven by certain assumptions or by a combination of assumptions. So you need to link those together into a modeling environment. Then you need to push the button, recalculate, and that will give you results. So now you're looking at what your budget looks like in the context of a scenario and assumption-based modification to that. Obviously, what you see the first time around probably doesn't reflect what you want to see. So then you do what we refer to as rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat is all about going back to your assumptions, going back to your scenarios, modifying, fine-tuning, adding new assumptions, linking assumptions to different accounts, refining the process, refining the numbers that you have so that you end up in a situation where you have a model that you're comfortable with. But once again, this has got to be relatively quick, relatively easy, and relatively out of the box. So just recapping on that, I mentioned all the functionality you need to have in a detailed budgeting system. You can't really have that in a financial modeling system because you're dealing with flattened data. You need to be able to extrapolate numbers, which are values per account, per cost center, per month. You can't really have that at a far lower level of granularity because, quite honestly, the assumptions and the drivers of that just would not work effectively. And then we've got multiple assumptions, various scenarios, and obviously the rinse and repeat. Predictive analytics is an interesting one. It's something we've recently brought into our system, and mainly because it seemed to be the buzzword in the industry. Everyone was talking about it. I have to say, though, predictive analytics at the moment probably gives you all the wrong numbers, because I don't see how you can use the last 15 months worth of data to predict what's going to happen in the future. COVID has really put a big hole in your track record of your actuals as a basis for projecting what's going to happen in the future. So predictive analytics, be careful of, be wary of, and obviously top-down budgeting. So top-down budgeting lets you go and calculate things at the top level and explode it down through your hierarchies to give you your departmental values, to give you your account values, etc. The nice thing about financial modeling is you should be able to take the results of a financial model and load it into your budget as a starting point to show people what, from a top-down perspective, you're anticipating the budget should look like, and then ask them to do a bottom-up budget to actually not necessarily align, but certainly you're giving them the pointers as to what they should be aiming for. And that was me rattling through my stuff very quickly. It was really a discussion of the objectives and the lines around budgeting, different ways you can approach it. And I will hand over to Linda to deal with any questions which have come up. Linda.
Thank you, Kevin. Just want to say thanks to everyone for speaking today. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. I'm going to kick off actually with this question, and it's probably going to touch with Alexi and with you, Kevin. So Alexi, if you want to start by answering this. So the question is, will it take cognizance of access codes and data row controls?
Yes, that's correct. So as I said, with the dynamic security, it will definitely look at the roles that are stipulated within X3, and it will then definitely take that into account. The other part of it is that if there's any changes that you would actually want to make within the system, you can also go and make those changes within those roles as well.
Okay, Kevin, do you need to add anything to that?
No, I mean, from our perspective, I think the security rules and the access controls around budgeting and reporting tend to be quite a bit different to what you would have in a standard X3 environment. So we tend to deal with it a bit differently, and we maintain what you can do and how you can do it independently within our solution.
Okay, brilliant. I've got another question now. So this one is for Alexi. Is there a limit on the number of applications which can be connected to the reporting application?
So I'm going to say that if you don't look at the limits that a license would give you, so essentially we limit on a license per data source. If you take that out of the equation, then it's the only real limit is what your hardware can handle. So apart from those two, there is no limit.
Okay. Next question for David. What would you say is the single biggest factor to influence finance in the next 2 to 3 years?
I would say the first one, and Kevin touched on it, is that Excel is not a collaborative tool or a database. So people living in the world of Excel are going to find it harder and harder to grow that and to make that scalable. The drive for efficiency, I think, is probably a big area. Finance teams don't want to keep on taking the extra staff, so things like RPA are being used for data import and data usage. The use of AI, things like supplier invoices, supplier payments, AI can help them with that. And I think the fact that people want to have a faster month end and year end, there are very large corporates now doing year end in 2 days, and that's unheard of. And that's because they are using the most up-to-date current technology to do these things. So, really, as it goes along, I think the businesses are going to be looking for more efficiency and finance team are trying to take more of a front seat than a back seat role, and they will use technology to do that.
Okay, thanks, David. Okay, now over to Kevin. I think this one's for you. So currency fluctuation, it's a big issue for our budget development. How would you recommend this is handled?
Well, I think currency is always going to be very flexible, and obviously it changes radically with changes in the world economics, and not just economics, but perception. So you've got to take a view, and you need to define for budget purposes what you anticipate those exchange rates as being, probably per month for the various exchanges that you deal with. Once you've done that, you obviously have the ability to go and change the exchange rates, or you should have the ability to change the exchange rates. That's one of the assumptions that you modify throughout your budgeting or modeling process.
Okay, and another one actually for you, Kevin, is IDU concurrent or named users?
We run it on a named user basis, and the reason for that really is because budgeting doesn't lend itself to concurrent usage, which may sound strange, but let me try and explain a little bit. Anyone out there who has been involved in a budget process, I'm sure there's a few of you, when you look at your budget process, nobody does their budget 3 weeks before the end of the budget deadline. When you get to the budget deadline day, everybody in the organization is trying to get into the system to finalize their budgets, or perhaps start capturing their budgets, because that's the nature of the beast. As a result, if you run a concurrent license and you've got 50 concurrent licenses for 500 users, you've got 450 users screaming at the administrator saying, I can't get into the system. Unfortunately, in a budgeting environment, concurrent licensing really is not the most effective use of licenses. So we actually support a named user license basis, and for that very reason.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Back to Alexi. So we don't use Sage. Are all the connectors as comprehensively configured with the same ease of use?
So yeah, we do, obviously being ZAP, we do for all the major highways. So whether it be SAP, Sage, Cispro, Microsoft, we do all those with the exact same ease of use. We also do cater for other types of connectors. So for example, like your Salesforce, Google Analytics. So we do have all those different smart solutions for those different types of products. And if we don't have that, we do also make those connectors available. So for example, like your SQL and your Oracle and all those types of things. We also can take in, like for example, Microsoft Excel as a data source, which you can actually bring in into the model as well. Thank you.
Okay. And finally, last question, David, would you say the innovation gap is the responsibility of the IT function, and how much should they lead the adoption of new software?
The innovation gap is an interesting one, because it's really down to each business to look at their business strategy to define how they want to close that gap and in what areas. There's an old saying, which is there are no longer IT projects. There are business projects with IT enablement, and that's very, very correct in this one. The business needs to look at what it wants to do, how it wants to change, and then bring in the IT, bring in the partners, bring in the right solutions for that. But I don't think IT, because of its very narrow, usually quite technical view, it's going to help in an innovation gap. In fact, in some cases, they would be part of why there is a gap there. So no, I think the business needs to do that, and IT needs to help them do that.
Yep, I would agree with that as well. Well put, David.
Okay. Does anyone else want to add anything there? No. Okay, so just want to say a huge thank you to the speakers today, to Kevin, Alexi and David, and to all of you for joining the webinar. We will be sending out an email with a link to this webinar, so please share it with your colleagues. If you have any questions or you'd like to contact any of the speakers, please get in touch with me and I'll happily forward your details on. That's the end of today's webinar. Thank you again from us at XP Consulting. Thank you from Kevin, thank you from Alexi, thank you from David, and have a good day.
And thank you for hosting this. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much.